Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Lounge Lab, the official podcast for the Skilla project. And today it's a special occasion because we are very glad to host a joint podcast with the RAISE project, another Horizon project that is collaborating with us in this episode. And I'm very glad to have here with me postdoc researcher Apostolos Kritikos and assistant professor Evdokimos Konstantinidis. Welcome. Thank you guys for accepting my invitation.
Hi, welcome.
Hello,
Uh,
thank you for having us.
Pleasure is all mine. And can you tell us a bit more about yourselves before we start the conversation?
Okay, first of all, again, thank you for having us in the podcast of Skill Lab. My name is Apostolos Kritikos. I'm a postdoc researcher in the School of Informatics in the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. I'm working as an engineering manager in the software as a service industry. And I'm also doing some research work in collaboration here with the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki and with the European Commission lately. Yeah, that's me.
Okay. And
And I'm Evdokimos Konstantinidis, assistant professor at the Lab of Medical Physics and Digital Innovation, the medical school. Background medical informatics, and I have been working the last 5 to 6 years on open data, RAISE project, and I'll tell more later.
okay, thank you very much. We'll talk more about the RAISE project because I'm very interested in learning more about that. So our topic today will be open data and skills. And let's ask the elephant in the room. So what are open data to give the audience a little taste of that?
Okay, open data is the set of data that are provided freely, and freely meaning free of charge, and openly meaning that anyone can access them, um, change them, study them, alternate them, create metadata from them, but with the but giving them back with the same open license as the original one. Also, when we're talking about open data, we need to be very careful that the open data should be in a format that can be machine readable, meaning either in CSV, JSON, or even better if it can be provided via an API.
Yes.
This would be a rough definition. As we personally, I like to follow the Open Data Institute definition of open data, which is the institute that Tim Berners-Lee has created in London, UK. Yeah, I don't know if you need to add more.
Actually, any data potential is open data or should be open. I will stick to the principles, fair principles, actually. So one step beyond open, we could go to fair, which means that we findable. Now, can you imagine how many data exist now in the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki in personal computers, and they're not even findable? Just to explain them,
Yeah.
or provide them the skills as your project do on how they open them. Accessible. So how can we action? Apostolos has already mentioned interoperable with formats that we can understand, not proprietary or closed formats. Open data in closed formats, which doesn't make
Yeah, it's a
sense at
paradox.
some point. And we end up with reusable, so to be reusable. So this is actually for us, when we say open, it's more on fairness of the data.
Yeah, no, the fair principle is very. Even when we wrote Skill Up, we stumbled upon this principle, and I quite like it because when we try to make Skill Up, we have very large obstacles in finding data because most of the data are locked behind paywalls and agreements and bureaucracy, basically. So it's very interesting that you provide data openly for free use, but what if someone wants to commercially exploit this data? Can they do that?
Before we go there, I would like to add in what Professor Evdokimos said, that we need to be careful when we're opening data. We need to be very careful in data that are either private or sensitive, because there are cases where, for example, in municipality level, we need to open some data from the everyday usage of some agencies or some organizations or some people or even citizens. So another aspect of the open data which is very important, and at least in the European Union we need to be very careful with that because of the GDPR regulation that exists for protecting the private data of the citizens. We should not open data that can identify explicitly persons as individuals. And even more careful we should be with sensitive data, like, for example, medical, which is
Yes.
professor can say more about it. It's his field anyways.
I use an example usually for this commercially. Opening your data, it's like opening your home. And nowadays, I mean, if we think the example, it's like allowing others to enter your home. You don't know who, you don't know what they do, and you cannot monitor what happened to your home. So this is why we are all skeptical. But imagine that I will tell you that I guarantee I'm with them. They get into your home, they don't touch anything, they leave a suitcase full of money, and they leave. Would you allow these people to enter your home? Yes, of course. Well,
Yes.
so it's always about incentives or what you get back. It could be commercially, but let's forget the commercially. It could be about if you give your data, you get citations. And I can't guarantee that you can get citations. Or if you give your data, then you get some credits for publishing to a journal.
Yeah. No,
So
that
you
makes
start
sense.
thinking of, okay, it's a win-win. Let's go for this or not. Because today it's like give your data, don't ask why and what will happen. Just give your data. So it's always
Yes.
the incentive.
But how do you guarantee this win-win scenario? I mean, okay, of course, I can just upload my data and say that, okay, if you use my data, you should cite me with this. How do you ensure that they will cite you and they will just not exploit your data and you get nothing back? Is there a mechanism for that?
I can take the opportunity to speak 2 minutes about Raise. So how
course,
this is,
of course.
so we get also a better
Yes,
idea.
sure.
So in Raise, actually, you keep your data in your premises, in your computer or your lab's premises, and no one can see, no one can download, but everyone can process them. So if I have an algorithm, I send it to your infrastructure where the data is, the processing takes place, the results are produced, I get back the results as I requested them with my algorithm, but everything, the action, who processed what and when, is written in a blockchain. Not the data itself or the processing itself, but the action. And we create a PID, a DOI, digital object identifier, DOI.
Yes.
So if I create a publication and I put the DOI there, it automatically goes to whose the data was. And there is also blockchain because if you change the DOI, etc., all the information is already in blockchain. So we try in Raise what we did actually, and I'm stopping there so we continue the discussion. We try to create technology not for making data sharing faster or more secure, but for addressing the fears and concerns of researchers towards open data. So we don't care about technology that would make these things faster. We have AI factors, we have so many technologies nowadays, but we thought that, okay, let's start with the barriers, the fears of the researchers, and let's see how we can provide answers to them.
Okay. Yes.
I can contribute another example outside the research world. Back when I was in the Open Data Institute for training, there used to mention an example of how UK government used open data to monetize them, which probably answers your question.
Yes.
So what they did was originally they created open data sets from the usage of the metro in UK, and then they gave it free and openly, and they actually advertised as government that these data are open, do whatever you want with them, no limitations, nothing. And what they see happen after that, ODI was the Open Data Institute was the organization that did research and analysis on the impact of this decision as they were working closely with the UK government. From the until then, we had one main app that people could use to use the public transportation of UK. After the opening of the data, tens of apps happened.
Yeah.
But here is the interesting part. The collective monetization of those apps was bigger than the original one app, which means that the market didn't just split in different apps, it created new revenue. And that's a use case where data given freely to the people without asking something back actually gave back to the country better monetization of their own infrastructure, which is the metro and all the public transportation.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, so I like you mentioned the fear of researchers towards open data, and we are researchers, so I know for a fact that sometimes when you find an open data set, my first reaction, it's not and I don't want to have that reaction. Sometimes I question the validity of this data set. So what are some common fears of researchers towards open data? And for example, in RAISE, what do you do to tackle them?
Actually, we're really surprised when we started looking for the fears of researchers. So as I said, it's like data is your home, let's say. Let's start from the case that there are many cases, a majority of cases, that the data have been collected, funded by the taxpayers through the European Commission. So the data, at the end of the day, belong to the taxpayers, belong to the researchers, belong to the community. But fears of researchers. You in the skill lab, you work on providing the skills for data. You know that opening data, it's not like I have an Excel and I put somewhere online. It means that it might take 2 or 3 months for a simple Excel to make it open, because open means I have to describe it so it becomes useful. I have to make sure that I don't have missing values, missing data. I have to make sure that even if I explain how I tagged them, how it was created, etc. I use the example like to understand how important is the metadata, or when you describe your data. Like if I give you a data set with average speed of cars in Thessaloniki and it's 0, does it make sense?
No, for Thessaloniki,
But
no.
if I give you the context that was during the lockdown, it makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
You see, so the metadata or how you describe makes a lot of sense for understanding or reusing the data. So I question myself, I have 2 months. Should I write a scientific publication that I can get citations, academic career, etc., or open the data and I know what happens? So I prefer, as you see, to write scientific publication, since it's gonna be a value for me as well, not only for the community.
Yes.
To have others that they say, okay, I have my PhD 10 years ago. So this is the data set that I use for my PhD. I defend it, and I'm a postdoc researcher, okay? If I open my dataset and there is another methodology, an AI tool that processes the dataset and gets different results from my PhD, I might be at risk. So it's better that I don't open the data. And there is a rumor, like, I don't know if it is true or not, I haven't validated it yet, that professors that are at the end of their career, they open the data a lot. I mean, but
they have nothing to lose.
they have nothing to lose. Which for me doesn't make sense, because every step, every mistake is useful for the research and for the development of research. And citations, you don't get citations. If you open your dataset, you don't get citations. So there is no value in this, or being criticized. Like I open my data and then I have Apostolos saying, "Oh, this is not good. Good data, or the methodology, etc." So to feel safer, we prefer not to open data, which doesn't make sense for me. There are many different fears, concerns, but these
are the basic ones.
Personally, I agree with everything that the professor said. I wanted to add, just as a follow-up, that when you're having an open data set, there are levels of quality of that open data set. There are a lot of ways that you can validate this. But personally, I prefer to use the 5-star open data validation system that Tim Berners-Lee has proposed, which is very simple for everyone to understand and for every organization to adopt, let's say. 1-star means just a file with open license. It can also be a PDF, nothing more. Images, whatever. 2 stars means open data in a way that we can edit them or consume them, like for example in Excel. But it is okay even if the file that we publish the data is proprietary. For example, Excel is Microsoft, so it's proprietary. The 3rd star is being added if the file is non-proprietary, and the meaning here is that we don't need to process the data through a tool that needs to be paid to acquire it. The 4th star comes when the data are connected with URIs, so they can be searched, and there is like a navigation through the data, so they are in some way connected. And of course, here is the concept
like
of,
ESCO.
Yes, and also here is it's connected with what Professor said, that we need the context of the data, not just tables with numbers and field names. And the 5th star comes when we have linked data. So data sets that from one field you can connect with a specific field from another data set, and there is a connection in a result and a meaningful outcome out of them. This is the way we are doing quality analysis in the data, at least with the 5-star open data validation system. And I wanted to say something that makes me bitter here. Unfortunately, after 2017, there aren't quality open data sets in the Greek government ecosystem that have been updated to fulfill those quality standards. It seems like we are stuck in 2017, and after that, we do not officially update our data anymore.
Yeah.
Let's hope this changes with the Open Data Act that now is being promoted from the European Union.
Oh, yes, I've heard about this. So what's the premise of this? The European Union wants to promote.
The European Union, after there are two drivers for what I'm going to say. One was the Draghi report, as we all know.
Yes.
And the second one was a European Union project that was led by the Commission, and actually our university and the School of Informatics participated there. It was called EU FOSA 2, EU FOSA 2. And the goal of this project was the first open European Union open source strategy 2020-2023. Professor Stamelos and myself were included in that project, and we were part of this strategy. Those two drivers led the Commission to promote strategically the use of openness in the European Union. And now, after the wars and all of the stuff, we see that we're talking about the sovereignty, the digital sovereignty of the European Union, which is established in those things. Open Data Act is another act to, in quotes, enforce the member states to adopt as more openness as they can in their data, because a problem we're having as a European Union is that we don't exchange easily our data and our findings. And I believe that partly is what you said about researchers fearing of their work will be stolen by others or miscommunicated or all of those things.
Okay, so I have two questions addressed to both of you. So the first one is what you said about the OpenAI, Open Data Act. And so I would like to ask, mainly to inform our audience as well, are there any institutions, organizations that are in charge of both evaluating open data, but also, for example, for issuing licenses in open data sets? And the second one is, ultimately, do you believe that the creation of apps, the processing, and everything related to data science and IT, should it be reliant solely on open data, or are commercial datasets still useful?
I'm not aware of any organization that licenses data, open data, or actually coming from the university, but I would like to mention the Hellenic Open Science Initiative, which I think many research organizations from Greece, but also universities are members of it, and they try to promote open science in general. So it's I think it's not only open data, it's open science in general, because if we
open
say open
science.
data, imagine the data and source code are kind of the same. They
Yes,
provide value
open
if you
science.
apply one to the other.
Mhm.
So Hellenic Open Science Initiative. The other is that I want to mention that it's always, and as Apostolos mentioned, is always about trust. There are two things: the top down, or let me finish first with the trust, and then I will explain the top down
Okay.
and bottom up. So trust is two-way. I trust to give my data to Apostolos because I know that he's gonna handle them in a fair way. But also Apostolos should trust me that I give him good data. So it's always a matter of trust. And I think that this trust does not exist. Even if I find a dataset online from Apostolos, I'm not gonna use it because I need first to call Apostolos to explain me
Yes.
to gain his trust, or he gains my trust, and then I understand that
ascertain the validity of the data.
Exactly. So I need to know Apostolos, and this is why if you see there are some reports for open science or open data, I don't remember exactly, from the European Commission, among 10,000 researchers responses, that they say that they prefer to exchange data either if they are enforced through a project or with people they know already out of the project, because it's a matter of trust.
Yes, sure.
And then I would like also to mention the top-down and bottom-up approach. I think that now we are in the top-down, like enforcement from the European Commission. I pay through the project this consortium, so you're obliged to publish data and all this stuff.
Yes.
But it would be nice if this was also bottom-up, if we felt that we have to open the data and not being obliged.
Yeah.
And I have read the study which says, and we try to apply it also in our department, that if you want to teach others, and I think this also goes close to the skill up. If you want to teach others how to open their data, start from make them using open data. It's different if you ask people, you know what, use this open data. So when we have master students or students and we teach them how to use, so they see the value. And when they become owners of datasets, they feel more relaxed and comfortable in opening data. So we have started some courses at the university on not open data, but open science in general, which makes a lot of sense and encapsulates data as well.
Sure.
Okay, I can contribute a couple of things. As far as organizations that are evaluating data that you asked, there are two global organizations that are leading, in quotes, the way. One is the Open Data Institute that I already
You mentioned earlier, yes.
The mechanism they have created is called Open Data Certifications. And what they have done is they created a framework which is open. Again, it's Creative Commons to anyone who wants to use it. It's a guide where you can, using this guide, you can answer a questionnaire about a data set. And depending on the result of the questionnaire, the dataset gets a certification in a scale of bronze, silver, golden certificate. If an organization is like a government and they want an official statement, they can talk with the ODI and they can get a certification, an official certification that the ODI can provide with a minimum cost for the service they are providing, because it's also a non-profit organization and they need to get funded somehow. The other organization is the Open Knowledge Foundation, which there's also a Greek branch of that. ODI also has a Greek branch of that. Just to be fair to the two organizations, the OKF is led by Dr. Bratsas, and the ODI Greek branch is part of the ELAC,
ELAC.
of the ELAC organization, based in Athens. And
That deals with open source, just to inform
that
our
is in
audience.
open source, open data, and everything
Yes.
open in general.
Yes, yes.
So these are the certifications that exist as mechanisms. Now, going back to what Professor said, and related to the Skill Up project, being able to view data as useful to the public is a skill.
That's
It is
true.
a skill.
Yes.
And the more pristinely you deal with them, the better and easier it is for another researcher to come in the dataset and don't have a lot of questions. So it's easier for this trust to be created. The more you document the data, which is also a skill, documentation is a skill in all the in all the informatics related sciences and professions. The more you document the data, the easier it is for a researcher to not have to call you, but just send you an email and say, okay, thank you for the original data set. Here are some metadata that came from my research. I'm sending them to you for a validation, original validation, and in the future you can use them.
Yes.
And that's the best scenario that you can have in research. Maybe it's ideal, but I like to think that we as a research community are going to this mindset rather than having, fights with each other that are meaningless in the end of the day.
I like the fact that there is, correct me if I'm wrong here, there's a bit of psychology involved in open data. I mean, you need to cultivate this altruism that is necessary to essentially open your work without minding your personal benefit. It's very. I like these concepts of offering to humanity in general.
I think that Professor put it nicely. Most of the data, at least in the government level, are data that are produced by taxpayer money. Government should be respectful for those data that came from the labor of the people in the end of the day.
Of course.
And we as researchers should be respectful that we have, or we can have this data as open data, so we can work with them and then get results that benefit the same people that funded the data in the first place. That's the principle. He said it very nicely.
Yeah, no, it was okay. And to bring back the conversation to Skill Up and to close off, it's very interesting. Open data is a very interesting concept, but in Skill Up we try to create an observatory, let's say a platform to observe the labor market of Europe and the demand and supply of skills. And so we focus on two concepts. It's upskilling, which means to upgrade your skills to find a better job, maybe, or reskilling to learn some new skills. And in this analysis, in the analysis that we do, we often wonder what skills are required to do X, Y, Z, anything. So it's very interesting to consider what skills do you need to properly operate open data, properly use open data. So you mentioned documentation, for example. So it would be nice to make a discussion about the skills that someone would require to use.
The first thing that I could think, because I'm getting also back to your point about commercial exploitation, is open innovation. So we need to start thinking open innovation. Open innovation means that I'm not scared of start discussing about openness with companies or companies discussing with the university. Because if you, most probably Apostolos remember, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, project between the academia and the industry, it was like, I do my own thing, I give you a closed thing, you test it, you publish, I get the results, but no collaboration.
Yes.
I mean, you don't see the code, I don't touch your scientific results. So now this is not the case. It should be open science or open innovation, actually, which means that we should start seeing that, okay, I have this data, I need this data to move to the industry, because as researchers, we can provide results, but for these results to be useful for the community in general, they have to be somehow commercialized, be products, like Apostolos mentioned before, the metro, they created products because these extra revenues were actually translated to extra value for the citizens. So we need to see somehow how we do this. And it's for me, it's, as I said before, it's about educating students. Apostolos mentioned about the need, how things should be done, how providing extra metadata is important. But if we are not taught how to do it, we cannot do it. Then we have to find our own ways, which will be not the best practice actually. And this could start not from the university, but even from the high school.
Okay.
Openness, giving,
Fairness,
using,
trust.
exactly.
So it comes down to curriculum design, which is also a skill.
Yes, and I would like also to add that for people that or for students or for researchers that are working with open data, of course, statistical analysis skills are very important because, okay, let's say we work with a municipality and we get, for example, all the data related to garbage gathering around the city, which is a very interesting data set for me, for example. Excuse me. And we're given this data set. It might be cleaning. It might need cleaning. It might have some null values that we need to work with them in a specific way that we don't get confusing results. So statistical skills are important and they are connected to open data set. The other thing is documentation, as I said. And the other thing, which is a skill, now that you have me, I have the...
Yes.
I can tell it to you.
Go ahead.
Writing, technical text. This is, I believe, the most underrated skill for a person that studies, especially informatics, because most of the times we are technical people and we haven't had theoretical education in like writing text. Being able to write clear and to the point technical text, not only documentation, but technical report, is a skill that needs to be in the top of the curriculum, in my personal opinion.
Thank you. I mean, I've been saying that for I don't know how long.
Now with generative AI, this becomes even more
Yes.
difficult because
Yes.
people will start writing,
Exactly.
not to the point, but in a nice.
When I see text with the bullets and the numbered lists, I'm like, okay, that's AI. I'm sure. Okay, and I have one final question before we close off the episode. On a policy level, you mentioned the Open Data Act from the European Union, but what else could be done on a policy level to foster trust, to even build even more on open data, to make the public more aware of their existence? Just some thoughts, not necessarily.
Possibly you can go until I think.
Okay, two thoughts from the top of my mind. Before I come here, yesterday night, I gathered a bit the policy that exists in the European Union opposing the policy that exists in the United States. And I found something interesting. I haven't realized it until I did this rough jotting down for your episode. While the EU legislation is trying to force the member states to not be afraid, as we said, to share data so that we can actually work as a union and try to get results by examining each other's data and seeing the differences or the similarities or at least the common challenges we have to address. Because despite of what most people think, at this specific period, most of the European Union member states have similar challenges to face. It's a lie that there are the best countries that you can live in, the others that are the worst. There are differences, but nowadays they're not so big, in my personal opinion. The core challenges of the people are the same, and we can address them if we search and share the same data. In the US, the open data legislation tries to serve another purpose, and this is to limit the power and control the agencies of the United States have to get data on specific people and their movements. So most of the legislation, if you see them, are mainly to limit the control the agencies have over watching movements of people or persons of interest or countries of interest for the United States. And I believe this is, we expected that because the European Union has a very different way that is organized as a democracy that tries to collectively find best practices. So I believe that, to answer your question, in the European Union, we cannot legislate and regulate more. We have overdone that.
Yeah.
Now is the time for the member states. And I was in the previous month, I was in the European Commission for an advisory group, and the chair was saying the same thing. Now it is the time for the member states to take action on those regulations and directives and find a way to better serve their own people using them as tools. Because as we see very often that the member states are opposing the regulation, the directives of the European Union, as if they are hostile against them or against them in general. Whereas the European Union does the legislation and also provides the financial tools for the member states to apply them.
Yes, exactly.
So what I would suggest is, sorry that I've taken so much time, but one thing I would suggest is the bottom-up approach that Professor said before, which is what? The municipalities, which is the lower governmental level of the country, watch the needs of the people, try to open as much data as possible to help the academia and the industry make useful results, and then use those findings to give services back to the people that can generate more data for the governments to get more data and do this cycle again and again and again. There is no need for policy. There just needs to be a place where the municipality and the government trusts people with the data.
Yeah, so localized supervision, let's say.
Especially
Equals.
with the research dynamic that the country has shown over these years, right?
I see that. That's very, very interesting, actually.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Apostolos, especially this with that the fact that the European Commission has recognized that we overdone it with the regulations. Now they need to see how they can make this policy. They keep the value of the policies, but they make them applicable. Because now, if I want as a person to open my data, health data, there are gonna be many people saying, "No, you cannot. It's my health, my personal data. You cannot because 1, 2, 3 Article X."
Yeah.
You see, so we need to make this really useful. And for the policy making, I like, and I was about to say also what Apostolos said to the bottom up, actually to go to the university. Do we have as a university policy for open science? You see?
Yeah, that's...
And we have started, I will speak about the region of Central Macedonia. We have started now discussing, and I use this as an example, and the European Commission wants to use this as an example. Now we're about to sign an MOU at some point to support them use open science tools that have been funded by projects in order to make their data open or fair or available. And this is actually when we close the loop. So the taxpayers paid money, they went to Europe, Europe gave this money to consortium, a tool has been created, value has been created, and the region uses these tools to provide value. So we bring the value back to those that they paid for this.
Oh,
This is really...
Yeah, that's very nice. And SkillUp would like to be a part of that when with the data that we can share, of course, because some of our
with
commercial
skills. I mean, you can bring a lot of value because it's not, as we said before, it's not about opening an Excel.
Yes.
It's about creating the skills to people, to the region.
Of course,
exactly.
Of course.
I was taking a look on what the current situation of the university is in terms of citizens, of university citizens, and I saw on the official site that we're now 100,000 people in the Aristotle University, students and academic staff alike. So I was thinking, if these 100,000 people, like 100,000 plus is the city of Volos. Imagine that. If we are a small Volos city inside the center of Thessaloniki.
Volos is nicer, but
if we, I agree.
Yeah.
If we manage to create a culture of open data, even in this 100,000 people ecosystem, I believe that the impact of that in the whole country can be massive.
Sure.
So maybe Skill Lab can start from there. Create a program or an initiative that can inform the citizens of the university to start with how the open data can be useful for them in their life.
Yeah, in collaboration with RAISE, of course.
Yes.
Of course, collaboration in
Yeah.
race and with everything else that the university.
Yeah.
So, we are a huge university, multidisciplinary, and I believe that cooperating with each other is
Yeah,
most needed than ever.
we should
these
look
times.
into that.
Or
It's-
the only way. There's
Yeah.
no other way.
Or
I think
the
it's the
only
only
way.
way.
Yeah,
That-
I
that's
agree.
correct. That's 100% correct.
Okay, so I would like to thank you both for accepting. It has been a wonderful conversation, and thank you for being here with me today. I hope that we can talk about this in another time to further promote open data. And for the rest of the audience that's listening, this has been another episode of the Lounge Lab, the podcast for the Skill Up project, and stay tuned for more.